Greetings everyone. In today's session, we are going to discuss about the energy charge theory. Energy charge theory is given by scientist Daniel Atkinson in 1968. However, it is also known as the Atkinson's energy charge theory, which explains how cell regulates their energy balance. Before going to the energy charge theory, there are some basic concepts. First of all, what is energy and this energy is required for what purpose? At the cellular level, there are different types of cellular functions. Like there are some catabolic reactions which converts the complex molecule into its simpler form. There are some anabolic reactions which synthesize the complex molecule or which synthesize the different types of biomolecules which are required to the cell. So for the conduction of these anabolic and catabolic reactions, there are some active transportations also. So there are different types of cellular functions which are conducted through the cell. And for these conduction of different cellular functions, the energy is needed. And in any biological form, the energy is present into the form of ATP. ATP is also known as the energy currency of the cell. The cell expends some energy in the form of ATP and also cell generates the energy in the form of ATP through the different types of anabolic and catabolic reactions. So energy charge theory basically revolves around the ATP. These are the adenine nucleotides, and the scientist Atkinson gave this energy charge theory based upon these adenine nucleotides. However, this theory is also known as the adenylate energy charge theory, or this energy charge is also known as the adenylate energy charge. The adenylate energy charge is an index to measure the energy status of a biological cell, whether the cell has the efficient amount of energy to conduct its cellular function or whether the cell is incapable to conduct these functions, or whether the cell has sufficient amount of energy or not. If there is sufficient amount of energy, then cell will be survive, and if there is no presence of any kind of energy, then cell will not survive. So scientists proved that this energy charge is depend upon the relative concentration of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and AMP, adenosine monophosphate. The concentration of ATP, ADP, and AMP maintains the energy equilibrium inside the cell. And for the maintenance of energy equilibrium, there is requirement of one enzyme known as adenylate kinase. The adenylate kinase enzyme converts the ATP into ADP plus inorganic phosphate, while further the adenosine diphosphate can be catalyzed into AMP with using same kind of enzyme. ADP is catalyzed into AMP plus inorganic phosphate. These are the reversible reactions. So ADP can be formed from AMP with the combination of inorganic phosphate, and ATP can be formed with the combination of ADP and inorganic phosphate. So for the regulation of energy charge theory, or for the calculation of the energy charge theory, there are some parameters. The scientist Daniel Atkinson gave some parameters in its energy charge theory. The parameters are like energy charge formula, or you can call it as energy charge equation. Then there is energy charge range, then the values of the energy charge. Energy charge, you can represent it as a AEC, adenylate energy charge. So energy charge formula is a ratio of concentration of ATP plus 0.5 into concentration of ADP upon the concentration of ADP plus concentration of ADP plus concentration of AMP. This formula helps to quantify the energy present into the cell. Then after calculation of the energy charge, the range, the value of the energy charge lies in between 0 to 1. The 0 represents the minimum amount of energy present into the cell, 1 represents the maximum amount of energy present into the cell. So if the energy charge value is 0, then we can say that the all nucleotides present into the cell is in the form of AMP. And if the energy charge value of a cell is 0.5, then we can say the all nucleotides, specifically adenine nucleotides present into the cell, are the ADPs. While if the energy charge value of the cell is 1, that is maximum, then we can say the all adenine nucleotides present into the cell are the ATP. If the energy charge value is 0, then cell needs some more energy because the cell is in energy deficient. If the energy charge value is 1, that is maximum, then cell does not need any further energy. The cell has the maximum energy to conduct various functions at the cellular level. So these are the parameters of the energy charge which are given through or which are proposed to the scientist Atkinson's. There are some also graphical relation in between the energy charge and the relative metabolic rate, that is the catabolic reactions rate and the anabolic reactions rate. In this graphical representation, the catabolic reactions are shown in the red line while the anabolic reactions are shown in the blue line. The catabolic reaction represents the ATP generating or the energy generating reactions, while the anabolic reaction represents the ATP utilizing reactions. There are different types of ATP generating and ATP utilizing reactions at our cytoplasmic level. So consider if your cell has the 0 EC value, the 0 AEC value, adenylate energy charge value, then we can say the cell has the maximum rate of catabolic reaction and the minimum rate of anabolic reaction. On the other hand, if your cell has the maximum amount of EC value, energy charge value or adenylate energy charge value, then we can say that the cell has the maximum rate of anabolic reaction and the cell has the minimum rate of catabolic reaction. So what the graph suggests that if the cell has the maximum amount of energy, then there is no need of further generation of energy in the form of ATP. So tendency of cell is that to generate the maximum amount of complex molecule which will expend the more amount of energy for the generation of different types of biomolecules, while there is no need for the further generation of ATP for the further generation of energy, so there is minimum rate of catabolic reaction. While in case of minimum energy charge value, the cell needs some more amount of energy. So the tendency of the cell is to conduct the more and more ATP generating reactions, that are the catabolic reactions, and minimum amount of anabolic reactions, because anabolic reactions needs some amount of energy, some amount of ATP, while catabolic reaction generates the energy, generates the ATP. So these are the catabolic reactions, these are the anabolic reactions. In this graphical representation, there is a crossover, there is an intersection in between the rate of catabolic reaction and the rate of anabolic reaction, which is represented at this point, which is the 0.85. This is the crossover in between the anabolic reaction and the catabolic reaction regarding the AEC, regarding the adenylate energy charge. The 0.85 value represents the equilibrium of the energy, where these points, specifically the intersecting points, suggest that the cell has the similar amount of the catabolic reaction and the anabolic reaction. So at the point of 0.85 EC value, the cell conducts the same rate of anabolic reactions and the catabolic reactions, and cell have attained the energy equilibrium, and this is also known as the poise, point at which equilibrium is attained. So with consideration of this poise and with consideration of how cell can have the different amount of energy, because the 0.85 value represents the equilibrium. So consider 0.85 is the equilibrium. The healthy cell have the EC value in between 0.8 to 0.9. So if your cell have the EC value, have the energy charge value below 0.85, then there will be two things. First of all, the catabolic reaction rate will be increased. The catabolic reaction rate will be increased and the rate of anabolic reaction will be decreased. And if your cell has the energy charge value more than 0.85, then the catabolic reaction rate will be decreased and the anabolic reaction rate will be increased. So this is the interpretation of the energy charge. This is all about the adenylate energy charge theory, which explains how the concentration of ADP, concentration of ATP and concentration of AMP helps to calculate the energy status of a cell. So how to get the energy charge value? First of all, collect your cell sample, then collect all the adenine nucleotides with the help of extraction methods, different extraction methods. Then separate these adenine nucleotides with the help of HPLC, and with the help of UV spectrophotometer calculate the concentration of ATP, ADP and AMP, put it into this formula and then into the graph, and whether your cell has the value more than 0.85 or whether your cell has the value of less than 0.85. Why I am suggesting 0.85? Because at the point of 0.85 there is equal amount of catabolic and anabolic reaction, so generation rate will be similar and utilizing rate will be similar. Then what are the applications of this energy charge? If we consider the value of energy charge, if the cell has the more value or suppose more than 0.85 or more than 0.5 value, then we can suggest that cell can survive in this type of condition. While if the cell has the EC value below 0.5, then cell cannot survive at that condition, because cell has the minimum amount of energy to conduct the different types of cellular functions. So if the AEC value is below 0.5, then cell is incompatible with the normal to conduct the normal cellular functions. It is always better to have more EC value to conduct the different types of cellular functions, and then only cell can survive at the given conditions. Then the energy charge also helps into the ecological studies, into the food industry and into the medicine industry. In case of ecological study, we can study the different intoxication or contamination of the heavy metals into any aquatic life. If the aquatic life cells has the more amount of energy, then there is no contamination of the toxic metal. But if there is a contamination of the toxic metals or heavy metals, toxic chemicals, then the energy charge of a cell drops, and we can say that the aquatic life is contaminated with the toxic chemicals and the toxic metal. In case of food industry, we can assume the freshness of the meat or the seafood by calculating the EC value. If the EC value is more, then the food is fresh and it can be consumed. Then there are some applications of the energy charge into the medicinal field. First of all, organ transplant. In case of organ transplant, if the organ has the sufficient amount of energy to survive into another host body, then EC value is important to calculate. Then in case of drug development, if we introduce a drug to a specific kind of microbe, it can be parasite, it can be bacteria, then by calculating the EC value, the energy charge value, we can say that whether the drug is efficient to kill that microbe or not. So these all are the applications of energy charge. Energy charge which suggests the amount of energy present into the cell in the form of ADP, ATP and AMP, and which helps to conclude that whether cell has the sufficient amount of energy to survive or whether the cell will be starved to the death. Thank you.